We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends. Come on in. Come on in to the home that sits on the corner of Keith Jackson Parkway in Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be a PATC legend. With your comments in the comment section, in the chat room, and with your phone calls later in the show. Give us a call later in the show at 763-260-1333. You can talk about anything in college football. Today, two main subjects in our monologue. First of all, we're going to be talking about the news that came out yesterday from a different couple sources. CBS Sports reported it. Dellinger of Yahoo Sports reported basically what's going on in Chicago today and tomorrow in regards to the college football playoffs. What is it going to look like in 2024? What could it look like in 2025? And then negotiations on what the college football playoffs are going to look like for 2026 and beyond are starting soon, according to sources at CBS Sports. Now, I did an episode earlier today, episode 310. Please take a look at that episode. We do a deep dive. We go through an article of CBS Sports. But I want to touch upon it at the start of this live show because, man, what is going on? I just, look, I love that we disagree with each other. I do. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. To disagree with how the playoff structure should look like, of course we're going to disagree, and there's a lot of great discussion involved in this important, very important subject, the college football playoffs. It's going through some changes. And whatever it looks like in 2024 is probably going to look different in 2026 and beyond. But there's so much. I can't believe what I just saw. I can't believe what I've read and what I've been listening to. There's a popular, I'm not here to rip on other college football YouTube channels, but there's a popular YouTube channel that starts at 5 o'clock Eastern time, and the hosts today were saying how they don't like the college football playoff structure for 2024. That's fine. But they said that the playoff committee didn't want to do the heavy lifting to change it to a 12, the best 12 team, the best 12 ranking, that there shouldn't be 5, there shouldn't be 6 conference champions get an automatic berth. That they didn't change it because they didn't want to do the heavy lifting. What? And that they're not the only people who are saying this. I don't think people either have paid attention, and that's what we're going to do here, peek around the corner. We're going to tell you the straight shoot on this. When they decided to go away from the four team playoff invitational, when they decided to do that, to change the contract not in mid-contract, but by the end of it, the current playoff structure, the current playoff contract with ESPN doesn't end until after 2025. The 2025 playoffs, that's the last year of the contract. To change it before the end of 2025, to do that, you needed everybody on board. You needed all of FBS conference commissioners and Notre Dame. It wasn't by majority vote, simple vote. It had to be an 11-0 vote to change it. They changed it, okay? They changed it, and they changed it to 6+6 model. Now, some of you don't like it. I happen to love it. But some of you don't like it. I understand that it's great discussion. There's a lot of value in your argument. But they changed it to 6+6. 6 top-ranked conference champions get an automatic berth. 4 of the top conference champions get an automatic bye in the first round. There's going to be 6 at-large bids. That's your 12-team playoffs. Now, for them to change it again in the midst of this turbulence, because it looks like the Pac-12 might disappear. And if the Pac-12 doesn't disappear, then probably the Mountain West Conference disappears. But either way, it looks like we're going to have 9 FBS conferences. So there was support to change it from a 6+6 to a 5+7 for 2024 and 2025. But it's getting late in the game. They have to get this nailed down for 2024. And the commissioners in Notre Dame, Jack Swarbrick, the athletic director, representing Notre Dame in these discussions in the playoff committee, they don't know when they're going to get a resolution with the Washington State, Oregon State, Mountain West, Pac-12 situation. So it looks like, now it hasn't come out officially, but it looks like it's going to stay with 6+6 for 2024 because they have to hammer out something. And by the way, if they were going to change it, they would need everybody to agree with the change. And how are you going to get the Sun Belt? How are you going to get the MAC conference? How are you going to get Mike Oresco of AAC? How are you going to get everybody on board to change it from a 6+6 to a 5+7? Or even more radical, all 12 teams. It's just the top 12 ranked teams. You're not going to get it. It's not about nobody wants to do the heavy lifting. Because it's impossible to lift. You're not going to... We've talked about this for months. Right now, the G5 has the leverage for the playoff structure not to change for 2024, 2025. So it's not about these 11 people representing the 10 conferences in Notre Dame, not wanting to do the heavy lifting. It's literally, they can't change it. They can't get it done because they're not going to get an 11-0 vote. Now, what I would advise the G5 and Mike Oresco to do is to leverage that 2025 playoff. You know, you have some time, right? 2025 playoffs has that 6+6 model in place, and to change it, you would need all 11. It would have to be an 11-0 vote, so the G5 conferences can stop any change. But I would use that leverage to make sure, to try to make sure, to attempt to make sure that in 2026 and beyond that you are part of the game, that you have access to the playoffs, that yes, if there's going to be 4 autonomous conferences going forward in 2026 and beyond, and it looks like that's the case, that there's 5 automatic qualifiers, 5 automatic bids, 5 top-ranked conferences get an automatic berth. Not 6, but 5, because, ladies and gentlemen, the automatic qualifying conferences, the autonomy 4, they're going to press for at least 7 at-large bids. They would like to go 8 at-large bids. In fact, there's a chance that this thing could go to expand to 14 or 16 teams and have it a 4 and a 12 or 5 and 11 or 6 and a 10, but probably not. I mean, if I was the G5, I would get together and make sure that you have playoff access for 2026 and beyond. So I would trade in my chips on the 2025 playoff structure and say, we're willing to go 6+6 down to 5+7, but we need access for 2026 and beyond. Okay, so that's one part of the discussion. And again, it is not about people not wanting to do the heavy lifting. They couldn't change it. And they can't really change it until 2026. And then it's going to be changed probably. And you won't need everybody's vote. You're not going to need an 11-0 vote. And then that's when the leverage turns to the 4 autonomy conferences. So I think the G5 should wheel and deal on the 2025 to protect themselves for 2026 and beyond. Now, if you want to talk about what should the playoff structure look like, you guys know how I feel. If it's a 12-team playoff, if it's a 14-team playoff, if it's a 16-team playoff, I believe the G5 should have access. There should be at least one automatic qualifier to go into the college football playoffs. Yes, most of the time, the G5 representative is going to get blown out. So what? So what? You make their season so much valuable. Their regular season so much valuable. Their regular season so much valuable to the media partners if you have an access for those schools to potentially make the playoff. You have their conference championship games so much more valuable. The athletic departments get more money. They get into the playoffs. They're involved in the playoff distribution. That helps the athletic departments for all sports at those universities. It helps a bunch of student athletes. Gives them an opportunity to compete. Gives them an opportunity for them to compete and then possibly later on get in the transfer portal to be seen and move up a level. So I am pro G5 maintaining playoff access in the future. I know a lot of you disagree with me, and that's fine. That's always a great discussion, a lot of valuable points either way. But it could not change. Whatever you think about that, it could not change for 2024 because they weren't going to get an 11-0 vote on it. Anyways, those are my points early in this tonight's show, talking about the 2024 playoff structure. I am surprised by how many people I've read on Twitter, message boards, and on a YouTube channel saying how they were embarrassed and they couldn't believe that the heavy lifting wasn't done to completely change the playoffs for 2024. And my answer to you on this is they couldn't. It wasn't about not wanting to work hard. It's not about not wanting to do the heavy lifting. They couldn't change it because they needed an 11-0 vote to change it for 2024 and 2025. 2026 is a whole different kettle of fish. Crab cakes and football, thank you so much for your generosity. Do the 6+6 get bad matchups? Yeah, it will get bad matchups. It will get blowouts. We get blowouts in every sport, in every playoff. NCAA basketball, we get blowouts in the first round. Once in a while, we get a Cinderella. And you know what? Last year, we saw Tulane beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. It could happen. A G5 school could win, but more likely, they won't. More likely, the G5 school will be a 12th seed playing against a 5th seed. In some years, maybe 11th or 10th seed playing against the 6th or 7th seed in the first round of the playoffs. But I think it gives that playoff access is everything. And plus, I think you keep away all the antitrust. I think you keep away the politicians. I think you keep away these other outside forces if you maintain access for the G5 schools. That's how I look at it. But yes, you're going to get bad matchups. You're going to get blowouts. Look, my Minnesota Twins, they have lost 18 Major League playoff games in a row. Breaking all records. They come from the weakest division in Major League Baseball. Guess what? They just won their division again, and again they have the worst record going into the playoffs. We see this in every professional sport and college sports. It's not always the top-ranked teams that go to the playoffs. Major League Baseball, these professional leagues, they cut up their divisions based upon geography to make sure the whole country buys into the product by the end of the season, that there's representative from every part of the country. Can't really do that in college football, but you can definitely democratize the sport to create more interest longer during the season. I bring up Duke and Notre Dame as a prime example, not in regards to the G5 situation, but if it was a 14 playoff like it is this year, Duke and Notre Dame is still a big game. But what if it was a 12-team playoff for this year? That Duke and Notre Dame game brings on so much more flavor, so many layers to the storylines, so much more drama, because it's like, can Notre Dame, are they going to get their second loss against Duke? And they still have Clemson and USC to play? Could they make it to the 12-team playoff if they lose to Duke but beat Clemson and USC? And then what about Duke? What about Duke? It gives so much more flavor to the season in a 12-team playoff. And I would add to the fact that if you make sure there's access to the G5 school, it creates so much flavor for those smaller universities. And that's how I look at it. But I understand a lot of people disagree with me, and that's okay. That is okay. John, 12 teams equals 2 G5 in my opinion. Bama beats Ohio State by 30, so why not? Or is that Oregon State? I'm not sure. Or is that Oklahoma State? Thank you, John. For the 2024, it looks like if we end up with 9 FBS conferences, it looks like there's going to be 2 G5 teams qualifying for the 2024 playoffs. And possibly 2025. But again, my advice to the G5 conferences is to wheel and deal with the Autonomy 4 conference. Then maybe let one of those go in 2025 to ensure access for 2026 and beyond. But thank you so much for your super chat, John, for your continued generosity to this channel. I appreciate it very, very much. John, once again, super chat. Let a G5 school like San Jose State hire someone like Tom Brady. If they have access, they'll get talent and kick butt. You have to give room for 2. So it looks like John wants to keep 2. I don't know if that's a possibility going beyond 2025. But have access, at least one spot for the G5 schools. Thank you for all the super chat. Oh, and then Mireya says, hi, Daniel. Thanks for your gift. Really, your wife is a very kind man. Say thanks to her, too. Thank you, Danielle. Daniel Montecastle, Mr. Hoosier, gave us a very generous donation to help us keep the lights on here at Peek Around the Corner right at the end of the show, and I failed to say thank you to Mr. Daniel. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You've been very generous, not only to the show, but for me in general. As a great friend on Twitter. You've been with me from the very beginning. In fact, we have talked on the phone. I won't get into too much, but Daniel has been on the inside of the inside of the inside, and he knows generally how we go about our business here, and he knows we are very serious in giving you all a peek around the corner. Thank you, Daniel, for your incredible generosity, and I apologize, I just did not see it until I disconnected. But thank you, Daniel, sir. Appreciate it. Bama beat Ohio State after they beat Cincy in 2021. Thank you, John, for the super chat. Appreciate it. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. Okay, first of all, let me say thanks for everybody that's come in. First of all, Skull Ducky, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate it. Brandon, first one in. Not quite. Not quite. Bruce Harris, Boomer. Skull Ducky saying to Brandon, not so fast. A-Mac, howdy y'all. Let's go. West Virginia guy. I see West Virginia upsetting TCU. Ooh. That would be a big, big victory for Neil Brown. To go 4-1 at the start of this year when his when he's on the hottest of the hot seats, West Virginia guy says West Virginia is going to do it. The architect. I am not afraid, Greg. Give us all the smoke, Cameron B. Reminding me that I got to get on learning Rock Chalk, the Kansas Jayhawk fight song. Kyle Visser. Kyle Visser is trying to get me going. He's trying to get me going. Has the Golden Gophers special teams coach been fired yet? No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. We talked about it last night. The Big Ten is trying to do me in here at Peek Around the Corner. They've got Minnesota playing Michigan on NBC primetime, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, on national television. They're going to show a murder on live TV. That's what they're trying to do. Gophers versus the Wolverines. It's not going to be pretty. Ted Evans, we are live. Gold Dogs bow down to Washington. Matt Neeson says, let's go Cyclones. UW might be a legit contender. I think they are a legit contender. I had Washington going to the playoffs. That was our preseason pick. Washington, Penn State, Florida State, Georgia. Looking pretty good, right? Looking pretty good. Greg the Heater. Greg the Heater. Greg is awesome on the bongo. Jeff Olson. He's tired of hearing me talk. He wants to make some picks. Make some picks. Hello, amigos. Maria, the moderator. One who rules with an iron fist. Okay, let's get to it. A lot of comments. Hope your singing voice is fixed. Thank you, Super Chat. Thank you for the Super Chat, Cameron B. Yes, my voice is fixed. I did sing at my dad's funeral. I sang really, really loud. I rattled the stained glass windows in the church. So it's fixed, Cameron B. I'm going to have to focus on Rock Chalk because I do owe you that, no question about it. And I do owe Kansas something else. And we're going to get to it right now. I do owe Kansas Jayhawks something else. Goal Nose FSU. Hey, Greg, haven't checked into the show in a bit. Hope is all well, buddy. Everything's good, Goal Nose FSU. You might want to check out our live show from last night. You might want to check out the changes in the Holy Smokes Theater. Check it out. Check out the show last night. And keep an eye on things. Keep an eye at Peek Around the Corner. Keep an eye on Peek Around the Corner. You got it. Now, let's get to the picks. Going in, we're doing our picks. First, I will make the picks for the 8 games. And then we're going to turn to the PATC community. And you're going to vote in a poll. That's how the PATC community makes their picks against the spread. It's going to be the same games I'm selecting. Now, the PATC community has made a comeback in the last 2 weeks. My record stands at 16-13-1. PATC community record stands at 13-16-1. So you're only 3 games behind me. You're coming on fast, so I'm a little nervous. But let's get to it right now. First game on the board. Louisville, North Carolina State. Now, this is a game I love this game. This is the type of game where North Carolina State, at the beginning of the season, I was high on them last year. I was very high on them last year. I was foolishly high on the Wolfpack last year. This year, obviously not as quite as high in the Wolfpack, but I thought the transfer, Brennan Armstrong, watching him at Virginia, Figured he'd have more of an impact behind a decent offensive line instead of the offensive line he's played at Virginia for the last 4 years. I believe the lefty would come in there and really show his ability. And he's done it somewhat. But man, they struggled against Virginia. Brendan Armstrong is basically the whole offense. And even that, like he went, 15 to 30 last week? He's the one who's getting the most yards on the ground. And Louisville's a little different, man. Jake Plummer, the running back, Jawar Jordan, they have got weapons. And Jeff Brom, their first-year head coach, has got the Louisville Cardinals a little bit ahead than what I believe, what many people believed at this point. At the beginning of the year, it would not have been the Louisville Cardinals -3. But now it is. And I believe that line is a little too low. I've got Louisville in this game. I'm taking them. I'm giving North Carolina State 3 points. Louisville on the road covers. That's who I've got. Next game. Utah and Oregon State. Yesterday, Oregon State Beavers were 2.5-point favorites. That line has moved up a point. Quite possibly, it's because Cameron Rising, the information says he's not going to play again. So, Oregon State came back. They played it was a great game. They lost to Washington State by 3 points. Oregon State's at home. More money's getting put on the Beavers, but I'm going with Utah again. I'm going with Utah again, even if they don't play Cameron Rising. They're going to find a way to win this game and to cover. They'll probably win by a touchdown. Utah plus 3.5. It's impossible to go against Kyle Whittingham right now. So I've got Utah plus 3.5. Now, Kansas at Texas. Texas is back. So far, in my 16-13-1 record, I'm 0-2 going against the Kansas Jayhawks against the spread. I took Illinois against Kansas. I was wrong. I took BYU in 9.5 points against Kansas, and I was wrong. Kansas has defeated me 2 times. They're not going to beat me a third time. I'm taking the Kansas Jayhawks to cover. I'm taking 16.5 points. And I'm looking at like a backdoor cover here. Kansas Jayhawks plus 16.5. Florida at Kentucky. Well, look at here. The Florida Gators playing a whole lot better than I ever believed they could in 2023. The Kentucky Wildcats, if you remember, they were PATC's #1 sleeper for 2023 of the whole country. The Kentucky Wildcats. Last year, #1 sleeper was Tennessee. We nailed that. Nobody had Tennessee finishing in the top 10 in the country at the start of the year. They were not even ranked in the top 25, but we had them. Kentucky in 2023 is our Tennessee of 2022. Devin Leary's just getting going. I love Kentucky. At home, and I'm only giving 2.5 points. I'm only giving 2.5 points. I don't even have to give a field goal. I'm taking the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, Game 5. Clemson at Syracuse. Klubnik showed me a lot in that game against Florida State. He made some plays. He made some plays in that game that I didn't think he was able to make. Clemson played, they could have won that game. It was back and forth. The scoop in the score by number 4, the Florida State Seminoles linebacker, really turned that game, tied it up at 24-24, and then the Seminoles won it 31-24. How does Clemson bounce back? I think they will. I think they'll be there. I don't think they're gonna come in there with their heads held low. They've already have 2 losses. In Syracuse, they're probably going to have difficulties against the Clemson's defensive front line, front 4. But there's something about the Orangemen once again. Dino Babers, Garrett Schrader, he's the type of guy who can make possibly some plays against Clemson. Kind of like a Riley Leonard of Duke. Not quite the same. LaQuint Allen, running back, over 100 yards last week. I've got Syracuse covering. In a close game, Clemson winning, but I got the Orange covering this game. Syracuse plus 6.5. And I'm going to be fascinated to see what you guys pick in this game. USC at Colorado. Now, I took Oregon last week, and I gave 21 points happily, and Oregon won that game. It was an absolute blowout. Colorado's getting 21.5 points this game. I'm taking Colorado. Is it crazy? Possibly. But I see a backdoor cover here. Look, you watched the USC Arizona State game? You watched any Trojan game this year? If Colorado's down by 28 points, if they have the ball with 4 minutes to go in the game, Colorado's going to score a touchdown. They just are. The backdoor cover is where I'm taking Colorado. I think this is as close to a lock as possible. But it ain't my big lock of the week. That's coming up here real shortly. I'm taking the Colorado Buffaloes. I'll take the 21.5 points. I know they're without Hunter. Colorado winning this game is probably not going to happen. But I can't see USC keeping that 28-point lead with 4 or 5 minutes to go in the game. I do not see it. LSU at Mississippi. I am down. Down on Ole Miss. And it's not a recent bias type of deal. I know, look, I was stupid last week. So were you guys. We both took Ole Miss plus 7 against Alabama. There's something wrong. There's something wrong at Ole Miss. I know that was their first loss of the season, but they're not doing what they did last year. Last year, that O-line with Quinshon Judkins, the great running back, they pushed people around. They're not doing that this year. Jackson Dart needs that. And it's not happening. I don't know the reason why. But 2.5 points, LSU minus 2.5 points. Give me LSU Tigers all night long. I'm taking LSU. And the PATC 5-star lock of the week. We're going to be doing a watch party, live watch party, Saturday night. Notre Dame and Duke. Buckle up, brace for impact. We're going to be doing that game. We're going to be coming on live about 20 minutes before kickoff. Please join us Saturday night. Notre Dame, Duke Blue Devils. Our own Lewis, the legendary caller, PATC, he's going to be at that game. Remember that. He has tickets for the Duke game. Duke Blue Devil fan. I'm taking Duke. I was very impressed with Notre Dame against Ohio State. Very impressed. We talked about it. We had a post-game show at the end of that game. We talked about it last night. I believe Notre Dame was a little bit too risk-adverse with Sam Hartman. I believe they should have took a little bit more shots downfield against Ohio State. Notre Dame's defense is legit. They collapsed at the end of that game. They only had 10 guys on the field for the last 2 plays. The wide receiver room still isn't strong, but they got young guys and they're getting better. Estime is a tough runner. Give it to Estime against Duke. Duke got fortunate against Clemson, but I got to tip my hat to Duke. But they stripped the ball. They got some key turnovers. They also had a scoop and a score against Clemson in that victory. And now they're back home. This is a big game for Duke. Riley Leonard, we've seen him on the stage with the bright lights on him. And he performed admirably against Clemson. I think he's going to do the same against Notre Dame. It's going to be a tight game. I don't see Notre Dame going in there and blowing Duke out. I don't. I think it's going to be a nail biter. I think there's going to be a lot of drama. I think Notre Dame has to overcome, make sure that the Buckeyes don't beat them twice on Saturday night. I think a lot of people think this is a close game. They're putting it on. It's game day, college game day. So we've got the Duke Blue Devils. So peek around the corner, we've got Louisville, Utah, Kansas, Kentucky, Syracuse, Colorado, LSU, and Duke. And now it's time for you all, the PATC community, in real live voting. I give you about 30 seconds to cast your vote to make the predictions. The majority vote rules within inside the PATC community. Let's get at it right now. Let's get at it right now. Does Louisville cover Does Louisville cover -3 point spread versus North Carolina State? Yes or no? Yes, you believe Louisville will cover the -3. The poll starts now. The voting starts now. PATC community, it's your time. It's your time. You are on a roll. Last 2 weeks have been winning weeks for the PATC community. Giving you 10 more seconds. Three, two, one. Ending the poll now at 63% of the vote. The PATC community took the Louisville Cardinals. The Louisville Cardinals. Okay. Second game. Does Oregon State cover the 3.5 point spread? -3.5 point spread versus Utah. The poll, the voting starts now. Does Oregon State cover the 3.5-point spread? It's a close vote. Maybe not so much anymore. Giving you 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. With 62% of the vote. The PATC Community selects Utah to cover the plus 3.5 over Oregon State. Play number 3. Play number 3. Does Texas cover the minus 16.5-point spread versus Kansas? The voting starts now. The voting starts now. Does Texas cover? The votes are going back and forth. Giving you 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. 74% is taking Kansas in a rout. In a rout. Wow. Wow, Texas is back. Texas is back, but not according in this game. They don't think Texas is going to win by 17 points. Thank you so much once again, Daniel, for your incredible generosity to this channel. I appreciate it so very much. You're helping us. You're basically keeping the lights on for us. Thank you, Mr. Montcastle, and your wife, of course. Thank you so very much for your super chat. Appreciate it. Wow, a lot of people. Son of Sarek said Texas barely. Mr. Monkey says tough game. Cougar Track says Texas, but the vote went heavily for the Kansas Jayhawks. Again, I'm 0-2 going against Kansas. So I wasn't going to go against Kansas this week. No way. But I do think Kansas has got to bring it. If they want to keep within 17 points, Kansas has to bring it. Because Texas is no joke. It is absolutely no joke this year. Okay, so we're going to play number 4. Play number 4. Florida and Kentucky. Does the Kentucky Wildcats cover minus 2.5 point spread versus Florida? The voting starts now. Giving you 10 seconds. 10 more seconds to vote. 3, 2, 1. 62% of the vote says Kentucky will cover. The Kentucky Wildcats will cover. Now, Son of Sarek says Steve Spurrier isn't walking through that door. Okay, Clemson and Syracuse in the Dome at Syracuse. Does Clemson cover the minus 6.5 point spread versus Syracuse? The voting begins now. I think this has got to be a close vote. Got to be a close vote. We haven't had a close vote yet. Does Clemson cover the minus 6.5 point spread? Going to give you 10 more seconds. 10 more seconds to vote. Three, 2, 1. 56% of the vote. What did it say? Did it say no? Or did it say yes? I think it was 56% said yes, Clemson was going to cover. Right? Do I have that right? Did you guys say Clemson was going to cover? I'm pretty sure you did. 56%. Yes. Daniel says yes. Okay. You guys took Clemson. I figured that'd be a little bit closer vote. Now we're on to game number 6. I'm glad I was correct. Man, I lost a little focus there. Okay. USC in Colorado. Does USC cover minus 21.5 point spread on the road versus Colorado? This is going to be pretty interesting. Does USC cover the minus 21.5 point spread versus Colorado? The voting starts now. Voting starts now. I'm a little shook on this one. I'm a little surprised the PATC community. There must be some ballot box stuffing going on here. What's going on? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Wow. 61% has USC covering the 21.5 points. Man, oh man, how quickly you all turned. Last week, I took Oregon minus 21. You guys took Colorado. I think you took Colorado. Hold on. Let me check the record books here. I might be wrong on that. No, you guys took Colorado. 62% took, and then they get crushed, and then you guys take USC heavily against Colorado. Why I flipped, and now I'm taking Colorado to cover at home. Holy smokes. Okay, the next game. We got 2 more to go, and then we're going to get to your phone calls. You can talk about anything you want in college football. Talk about your team. What do you think's happening? Who do you think should be the top 4 for the playoffs going on right now? Who is your top Heisman? Who is your top Heisman candidate right now in going into week number 5? Does LSU cover? Does LSU cover the -2.5 point spread versus Ole Miss? The voting begins now. Does the LSU Tigers cover the 2.5 point spread versus the Mississippi Rebels? Right now, the voting shows a blowout. I'm going to give you all 10 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. 83% takes LSU. That's our biggest blowout of the night so far. And I agree, I've got LSU as well. And here we go, the last game. The last game, the big game. We're going to have a watch party here next Saturday, not this Saturday. Yes, this Saturday, excuse me. This Saturday evening, Notre Dame at Duke. Does Notre Dame cover -5.5 point spread versus Duke? The voting begins now. Mr. Monkey says, I hate both these teams. Can they both lose? No, they can't. No, they can't. Immaculate says Duke is going to shock the world. Does Notre Dame cover 5.5 point spread versus Duke? It's a tight vote. I'm going to give you all 10 more seconds to cast your vote. 3, 2, 1. Ending the vote. Ending the voting. 57% says Notre Dame covers. Holy smokes. So that's it. We'll go through them real quick here, then we'll get to your phone calls. Thanks for everybody participating for Week 5 selections against the spread. The first game, Louisville, North Carolina State. We both took Louisville, -3. The next game, Utah, +3.5 versus Oregon State. We both took Utah. Kansas versus at Texas. We both took Kansas, +16.5. The fourth game, we both took Kentucky, -2.5. So the first 4 games, the fat guy from Minnesota and the PATC community are in agreement. Game number 5, though, it took a change. I have Syracuse covering the 6.5 points. The PATC community took Clemson, -6.5. The next game, I took Colorado, +21.5 points. The PATC community took USC, -21.5 points. We both took LSU, -2.5. And Notre Dame at Duke. Duke is my 5-star lock of the week, +5.5. The PATC community laughs at my face, in my face, and you all took the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, -5.5. So those are the selections. A lot of comments coming on in. Please, if you're new to the channel, subscribe to the channel. If you like our content, please smash that like button. And if you want to have a comment that shows up, we do a deep dive, we talk about it immediately as fast as we possibly can, hit the $sign donation, and will light up your comment. Thank you all for doing the voting. Now we've talked about the college football playoff structure. We went through the selections for week 5. Let's get into your phone calls. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. The number is, let me get the line open here first. The number is 763-260-1333. Talk about anything you want in college football. We began the show talking about the college football playoff for 2024. They had a meeting in Chicago today. I think they meet tomorrow as well. The College Football Playoff Committee. Basically, the commissioners of the 10, of the 9, soon to be 9, but George Kleikoff is at the meeting. So you got all the FBS commissioners and Jack Swarbrick, the Notre Dame athletic director, and they're discussing what is the playoff structure going to look like for 2024? What is it going to look like for 2025? In negotiations soon will be about 2026 and beyond. And according to reports, Dennis Dodd at CBS Sports, Ross Dillinger at Yahoo Sports, it looks like the 2024, they're going to stick with that 6+6 model. 6 conference champions get an automatic berth, 6 at-large berths. Now, a lot of people disagree with that. A lot of people want to change in that. But it's important to note that you need a unanimous vote to change that structure for 2024 and 2025. Greg Sankey, as Rebecca Salisbury said early in the chat, Greg Sankey has said he would like to have a 12-team playoff, but have the top 12 ranked teams make it into the playoffs. But he also said, and according to CBS Sports, Dennis Dodd, Greg Sankey also said in that article, there isn't much support of that from his colleagues. And I can see why. So I don't think that's part of the future for a 12-team playoff or a 14-team playoff in 2026 or a 16-team playoff in 2026. I think there's going to be automatic qualifiers in these playoffs. I think that creates value for everybody, especially those conference championship games. To be one of the top 4 ranked teams to get a bye in the playoffs, you have to be a conference champion. So automatically that creates more intrigue in these conference championship games. And I'm a big, strong supporter of keeping G5 access in the college football playoffs for 2024, obviously, 2025, obviously, but especially for 2026 and beyond, where we don't know for sure if the G5 conferences are going to keep their access to the playoffs. We don't know that for sure. We don't know who's going to be in that room deciding this. Could the autonomy conferences, could those 4 conferences shut everybody else out? I hope not. But it's a possibility. I think it's a minor possibility, but it is a possibility. Daniel says, Maria should hide the TV remote this Saturday. Well, this Saturday, the Gophers play Louisiana Cajuns. It'll probably be a close game, but it's the following Saturday where Minnesota plays Michigan on NBC. Prime time. And I'm going to be doing a watch party. And during that watch party, before, I should have had this ready. Hold on, everybody. Before the game, the Michigan-Minnesota pregame, during the first quarter, during the second quarter, I will be playing this song, unfortunately, quite a few times. I don't know what the Big Ten and the NBC network is trying to do to me. Putting that game on. NBC primetime. Wasn't there another game they could put on? The Battle for the Little Brown Jug? What's going to be the point spread in that game? Michigan by 1,000? Anyways, it's going to be terrible. Lafayette by 3. No, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Will you ever play the Michigan fight song during the game? If I add it to my sound bar, I might. I have to be careful with those fight songs, though. You can get knocked for that stuff, so I got to be careful. Tulane could host a first-round game in 2024. Without a doubt. Yep, they could. They could slide in as the 4th ranked conference champion ahead of one of those Autonomy 4 conferences. No question about it. It could happen. It could happen. Although Tulane loses their great quarterback, Michael Pratt's not going to be around for 2024. So Tulane will probably take a step back. But there's other college football programs in G5 that could possibly get a first round bye. Hail to the victors. Yeah, I got to be careful. I'm not sure if I can play that. Not sure I can play that. I'm going to have to look into it. Wolverines over the Golden Gophers by a whole lot. How can the Pac-12 have an automatic slot for 2024? Well, nobody technically has an automatic slot. Right? It's the top 6 conference champions. It doesn't automatically mean the 4 autonomy conferences or 5 autonomy conferences and then the G5 conference. It could be 3 G5 conferences and 3 of the autonomy conferences, but probably not. In regards to 2024, thanks for bringing that up, B-Bean. The Pac-12, Greg Sankey if you go back to episode 310 that we released this morning, in the NCAA bylaws, there's a 2-year grace period where they would possibly recognize a 2-team conference, a Washington State and an Oregon State, that they would recognize that as a Pac-12, as a conference. But Greg Sankey took a big shot in the article with CBS Sports and said, the CFP, the College Football Playoff, the managing, the committee, is not the same thing as the NCAA. In other words, the College Football Playoffs would not recognize the Pac-12 as a conference with only 2 schools in it. So I think Sankey basically torpedoed that idea. You can be recognized by the NCAA, but we're not recognizing you. Whoever wins, whoever has the better record between Oregon State and Washington State isn't going to be recognized as a conference champion when it comes to the College Football Playoff Committee. So, and I don't think that's going to be how this goes anyways, right? I think there's going to be some sort of resolution where Washington State and Oregon State either fold into the Mountain West or the Mountain West schools all fold in with Oregon State and Washington State if they can gather most or all of the Pac-12 assets when they go fighting back and forth between the other Pac-12 schools. So I don't think we're going to get a 2-team conference. Now, again, if let's say the Mountain West schools fold in with Oregon State and Washington State, and they become a Pac-12. They're the Pac-12 or the Pac-14. Okay? Again, a Pac-14 doesn't get an automatic berth. No one technically will get an automatic berth. The champion of the Pac-14 would not get it. They would have to be one of the top 6 ranked conference champions. Okay? Out of the 9 FBS conferences, because under this theory, there would be no Mountain West Conference. So you'd still be at 9 FBS conferences. But if the Mountain West schools fold into the Pac-12, create a Pac-14, one of the interesting points is, would the Pac-14 under this scenario garner the same revenue as the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12 when it comes to playoff distribution, the percentage? If I had to take a guess, I would say no, they wouldn't. Right? I think they would get the G5 allotment. However, how much money each G5 school gets, I think the Pac-14 would get that, the same percentages as the Sun Belt. A Sun Belt school, let's say they would get $16 million in playoff revenue. I think Oregon State would get $16 million revenue. I think in Eastern Michigan would get $16 million in revenue. I think a Tulane and ACC would get $16 million in playoff revenue. I think they would get all the same. I'm sure Washington State and Oregon State and the Mountain West school would fight to get the same percentages as the schools in the autonomy, the other 4, the SEC, the Big Ten, and the ACC, but I don't think they're going to get it. But we'll see. That's one of them. Another issue that everyone's going to be battling over because of this wave of realignment has just made everything chaos, right? Got it. Yep. AAR, rumor has it Washington State and Oregon State might be sitting on a gold mine. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how that... most of their argument sounds pretty good to me. But I also understand the other side of the coin, because we've been back and forth at peek around the corner here. We'll see what happens. See what happens. Again, the phone lines are open. 763-260-1333. You can talk about anything you want in college football. The game's coming up this week. We did have a super chat. I'm sorry, Cougar Tracks. How are you picking the BYU-Cincinnati game Friday? I'm not picking it. I took a look at it. What was the spread in that game? What was the spread in the BYU-Cincinnati game? I don't remember. If anybody knows, put it down in the comment section. I'll take a quick look here. Does anybody have that info? Okay, let's take a look. BYU plus 1.5 at home. BYU plus 1.5 at home. That's what we got. Yeah, I mean, I don't feel good about taking that game. Emory Jones, Cincinnati. Now they're struggling on offense. They can't get anything done in the red zone. In BYU, they failed to cover the spread for me against Kansas. They're at home plus 1.5. The line looks pretty good to me. Now, Mr. Monkey says BYU 31, Cincinnati 13. Don't know about that. Yeah, I'm not going to take it. But thank you, Cougar Tracks, for your generosity, for your super chat. I appreciate it very much. Going to be a good, tight game. A pretty important game for BYU, right? They just lost the first game. Can they get back on track? They're back at home. Big game. Big game for both schools. Well, Joe, the G5s, let's say they want equal revenue share as the Autonomy 4 conferences. Well, they're not going to get it. What could the A4 do? Could they threaten to break away? Sure. They have leverage. Right now, all the autonomy school, all the autonomy 5 autonomy conferences, they split up 80% of the revenue, which is like 400 and some million a year under this old contract, this playoff contract, which this is the last year of the old playoff contract. And then all the other G5 schools, conferences, split up 20% of the pie. It could be an 80-20% cut again for 2024, 2025. That is one of the main issues they're talking about in Chicago today and tomorrow. It's the money. It's the distribution. Who gets what? Now, in this old contract, the money was delivered per conference. So each Autonomy 5 conference, each Power 5 conference got about $79, $78, $80 million per conference. And then the other G5 conferences got the same amount. Each conference got the same amount, whatever that was. I don't think they're going to settle on that. I'm pretty sure that's not going to be what they decide. I think they're going to be each autonomy conference school gets this amount of money, not per conference, per Power 5 school. And then in the G5, it's going to be each G5 school gets the same amount of money. Now, each school would get more money if they make the playoffs, right? Performance money, of course. But the flat distribution fee that each school would get is going to be the same in the G5 and the same in the Power 5. It's one of the reasons why the ACC could expand, add in the California, Stanford, and SMU, because SMU is going to get playoff distribution money at a Power 5 rate. So, people talk about how SMU is going to go without their media contract of the $7 million a year. They're going to make up more of that with the playoff money that they're going to get every year as a Power 5 school. They're going to make that $7 million plus whatever the G5 are going to get in playoff distribution, and then some, just taking the playoff money as being a Power 5 member. So SMU is actually coming out a little bit of a head, even though they're not taking any revenue, media revenue from the ACC for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it is. Take the old BYU Cougars over the youthful Cincinnati Bearcats. A lot of people like BYU in the chat over Cincinnati. Too difficult to take, in my opinion. Too difficult to take. Opie says he thinks Oregon State and Washington State will have the autonomy 4, the Power 4, force them into the Big 12 to get this mess cleaned up with the PAC. More money for the P4 then. Well, who's going to pay the freight though? I mean, the Big 12 is not going to do everybody a favor by adding 2 more slices to the pie if the networks are not willing to pay for it. Remember, those 4 additions that the Big 12 added on are basically getting what all the other Big 12 schools are getting. There was no dilution of the pies in regards to the current Big 12 schools by adding those 4 schools. If you added an Oregon State and Washington State, those are 2 more slices of the pie that you have to share with when it comes to bowl money, when it comes to NCAA credit money that the conference collects. Would they come in at a discount? They probably would, but how much is the networks willing to pay for that? Doesn't sound like they are willing to pay for it.
Call from
Immaculate.
Immaculate, Mr. Hawkeye, the floor is yours. What's going on, good sir? You guys got a show tonight?
We do. It's actually in about an hour, so I had to jump on with you real quick and touch base with you. We're going to...
Sounds
just
good.
Kind of our usual beginning of the week show. We'll go over our picks.
Yep.
And then obviously some talk about the situation that may or may not have saw that I've put out my opinion on. So we'll probably continue that discussion as well.
Got it.
But first things first, I just got to say, Commissioner Sankey is full of shit. Sorry, but he is not in a position to be saying the things he has to say. He's not in the high council, so to speak. He's in management. He has no say in this, and normally, he has a pretty good take on things. But what he recently said to Dodge was he overplayed his hand. He did say that it's very important to get the pack figured out, and it is. It very much is. But to be like, well, the CFP is not the NCAA, and we don't have to. Well, that type of a change requires a unanimous vote from up on top. And I have yet to see any news about Kirk Schultz being removed from that position that he has there. And his one vote can topple any vote. So until I see that guy with a payment with a lot of zeros in his bank account, I don't see him voting against Washington State and Oregon State on this. So I really kind of found it to be a little bit desperate what Sankey was saying. That was just my opinion on it. I know you know some other things going on in there, and with everything going on in the Big Ten headquarters right now, I'm sure you are hearing things.
Well, I think Greg Sankey might have maybe not made promises, but made statements to the SEC schools when they added Texas and Oklahoma. I think he probably the scuttlebutt is that he basically said we're going to really open up the playoffs for more at-large, berths and all that. So I think he might have cashed a check. He cashed it before he got it. You know what I'm saying? It's like
I do, and that I definitely agree with because I think everyone did. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I don't think anyone saw the temporary restraining order move. I think they thought this was all just going to move just fine. And I think Colorado kind of made this all start a little too soon. We saw Petiti talked about it. He said as they moved forward the timeline. Well, if they hadn't done this, that vote probably could have happened before all of this. They could have had the new rules in place. And this situation where now, almost mistakenly, Washington State and Oregon State are sitting on a massive pile of money and the ability to stop any vote to stop that from happening unless they get what they want. It's crazy. I watch it and I'm sitting there looking at this thing, how this leads, and I'm going, this doesn't make sense, and yet it's staring us right in the face.
Yeah.
And some people don't want to believe the research that Navigate has done. That's fine.
Yeah.
There might be some other analytics and consulting organizations that have done different research, and that's okay. But to me, it's sound. We're going from 3 games to 11 games. That's almost a 4 times multiplier on the amount of games and thus the amount of advertising.
Yeah.
Their increase on the payout was right around the 3 times mark. So they're doing it conservatively, not overhyping numbers.
Yeah.
They're being conservative because they don't want to overstate numbers because then all of a sudden they're not going to be looked at as reputable.
Yeah.
So to me, they're sitting on a pile of cash, and it's like, we'll give this up if you give us a spot. What other play is there for them to do? And it's not really Fox or ESPN's position. That kind of got misplayed a little bit. I wouldn't have said what was said about ESPN is out this money. They're not. All that money just goes to the CFP. How it gets dispersed from there has nothing to do with the networks. But
and what's like what is the timeline for resolution? I mean, we might not have resolution for a while. I mean, are the courts going to get into it to where we get resolution here in the next month, or is this thing going to linger?
Well, we saw funny enough that all this is all starting to happen. And how many times do you see two schools right before their football teams play each other that they have, a combined press conference together?
Yeah.
But during that press conference, what they said was that they don't even have a scheduled date or whether it was the injunction that comes after this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a side of legal things that people don't realize is just getting things scheduled in court can take a long time.
Yes.
That's what takes the longest time. And then once you get something scheduled, the other side throws something at you, and then that has to go through the whole process again, and it restarts the schedule. And it could take a long time, and they do not have a long time. This comes up next year, when this would start. And we saw during that the press conference, and then in clippings afterwards, that they have this guy. I can't remember his name, but I guess he's a consultant for scheduling and whatnot. And he says it's possible that they could have their schedule done for 2024. So to me, I try to figure out how does that happen, because I said that was impossible. Well, if you're sitting on $160 million in cash, well, it's coming. You're not sitting on it.
Yeah.
Why not offer the Mountain West Conference, $30 million each, $60 million spread out between 12 schools, $5 million each to basically schedule you.
Yeah.
And that includes all sports. Just have a scheduling agreement. Here's double the pay that your schools get and schedule us all year. If we're going to be with you anyways, we'll just start paying you now. And if this doesn't work out, well, hey, for 2 years, you doubled your pay.
Where do you sit? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when you see that kind of money, it seems possible.
Yeah. Where do you sit on the possibility of Washington State and Oregon State possibly leveraging all this, like people in the chat room have said, into a Big 12 invite?
I think that's the play. Some people are like, oh, we shouldn't even think of that. We should think of the Big 10. We should just take this money and run. I'm like, that's the short-term play. Yeah. But then you're still stuck in the Mountain West after that. Now, granted, if you have that money, that's like, decades worth of Mountain West payments. But the best long-term security play is to leverage your place into the Big 12, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. I could be wrong. They might have, they have more information. They might make a different decision. But that's what I would do. And we know your Mark has a whole whiteboard of ideas that he wants to push, right?
Yes.
Well, you're giving him a gift, because everyone else is going to want him to take them in. And so now you're giving him leverage to get one of those things off of his board in order to take you in. And quite frankly, if everyone chips in $500,000 somehow through the networks to these guys, they make money. Because if you were to spread that $300-some million around to everyone, it comes down to about $10 million a school out of all the power conferences. So it behooves them to get this fixed. And if they have to put out the money themselves to make it happen, they still massively profit from it. That's why I think it almost seems inevitable. And they're all in the same room right now to talk it out without having to have another excuse for it. They're there right now.
Yes, they are. Good point.
So they could do it right now. We could hear this get figured out this week, possibly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
No, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Look at this going.
There's a lot going on.
Big story.
Yeah. And that's what you guys are going to talk about tonight, right?
Well, I went pretty good into that with Drake, and I think Nate wants to go pretty heavy into it. So
sure.
Yeah, I do believe that'll be after once we get through our picks. I'm sure he's going to want to jump right into it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
But,
All righty,
I just
sir.
want to say that part about thank you, man. I won't hold you on. And, you know, if you can stop by and hang out a little bit, that'd be cool.
Got it.
But anyways, man, good talking to you, man. Have a good
Good.
night.
Appreciate it, Mr. Hawkeye. Great call. Fantastic call. A lot of things going on. Holy smokes. Hopefully we see some reporting tonight or tomorrow morning on the happenings that happened today in Chicago, where all these commissioners and Jack Swarbrick got together and discussed what the playoffs are going to look like, and maybe they had some discussions in and around with Brett Yormark, and I don't know. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. John, thank you once again for your generous super chat. I appreciate it. If Oregon State and Washington State keep the PAC money, can they use it to buy their way into the Big 12? Kind of like SMU to the ACC. I guess, right? They could. Wild. Absolutely wild. Great comment, John. Yeah. To secure their spot as a Power 4 program, that's one of the, and Immaculate spoke on it, and that's one of these crazy theories, scenarios that could come true. You know, at this point, can you really push anything off and say it's not possible? Can you really do that at this point? I don't think you can. Now, some people believe, very smart people who've called this channel, who talked about in the chat, saying Oregon State and Washington State don't have a whole bunch of stuff going for them in regards to this dispute with the other PAC schools. A lot of smart people believe that. But man, I can understand why Oregon State and Washington State are pushing this though. Because it sure seems like the other schools did withdraw, and according to the bylaws, they wouldn't have voting rights, and we'll see how that goes.
Call from
Moen, who disagrees with me on the issue and has made some really good points on it. The floor is yours, Mr. Buckeye. What's going on, sir?
Which issue is it we disagreed on, Greg? Because we disagree on so many of them.
That where I believe that Oregon State and Washington State do have some grounds to say that the other PAC schools do not have voting, can't vote because they're no longer part of the PAC CEO board group.
Sure.
But yeah.
Well, they have the grounds to say whatever they want.
Yep.
What actually happened.
No, I think they have some merit. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Yep.
But I think
Yep.
ultimately they do they've bullied their way into somewhere. My guess is, well, either the ACC collapses or there's enough migration out of the ACC where adding Oregon and Washington State becomes eminently desirable. Or Fox and ESPN are going to have to come up with the money to put them into the Big 12. Okay. And I know Big 12 fans do not want them. I know that.
I think the majority don't want it, yeah.
Yeah, the majority don't want it. They think that they're getting all these ACC schools. But again, I don't think that the ACC is going to lose that many schools.
I don't think so.
I think at most the ACC loses 4. Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina State. I think the rest stick around.
I can see. I believe, and I've said this, and you said, I believe the ACC doesn't disappear, right?
Yeah.
But even in the most conservative scenario, where there's not many schools end up leaving the ACC, I do see a school or two choosing the Big 12 over the remnants of what the ACC. One of those schools is Pittsburgh. I believe they would take.
I don't believe that for a second. With the academic standing of the other schools in the ACC, I don't believe Pittsburgh would leave.
Yeah.
I think Pitt would stick around. The only one I would see is Louisville would be the definite to go.
Yes.
Makes the most sense for them. Basketball school, basketball programs, Big 12.
I would say Louisville and I would say Pittsburgh because I think there's value in Pittsburgh going into the Big 12. I think the yearly game against West Virginia, with the home and away, they'd be able to fill up their stadium one game every 2 years, plus Cincinnati, and plus I think they'd want to go with Louisville, things like that. But beyond that, I do understand what you're saying. I don't think the Big 12, I don't think there's going to be many schools, if any. I do believe there's going to be one or two that would go from the ACC under the most conservative scenarios. Go from the ACC
I think
to the Big 12.
People from the Big 12 are saying they're going to get, Louisville, Pitt, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State's going to go. It's just that looks further and further away once Notre Dame got the deal to get Cal and Stanford into the ACC.
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame sticks around in the ACC. I know you don't agree with that. You think that they're going to pull some. I don't believe that. They'll join the ACC as full members. Once the other four leaves, they'll get.
Yeah, we disagree. I don't believe Notre Dame's going to be joining the ACC as a full member.
I do, and it's going to be a revenue model where they're going to get the most money. They're going to leverage it. I mean, everybody in the ACC has already basically grabbed ankle for Notre Dame. So, I mean, it's not unheard of that at that point, once the ACC loses value like Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, that Notre Dame won't come in and play the hero and say, okay, we'll join as full members, but we get this, and we still get our special scheduling, and we get paid the most, and we get to keep all our playoff money, and we get a piece of your playoff money, and, we get so many games guaranteed on ABC through the ACC deal. And I don't trust Notre Dame, Greg.
Yeah, I know. I think I think we've got that message. No doubt about it. Immaculate, can I just interrupt you for a second?
My name's not Immaculate, but you can interrupt me.
No, I mean, Immaculate gave me in the chat. Heather Dinich has said a couple items here. I'm just going to read them real quick about the meeting in Chicago. Let me post it up on the board here. And let me highlight this a little bit bigger so everybody can see. AAC Commissioner Mike Oresco said that the CFP, College Football Playoff Committee, didn't talk yet here about format, but they should tomorrow. My sources, Heather Dinich, my sources have indicated it's leaning to a 5+7, but there is hesitancy to declare it while the Pac-12 uncertainly looms. Stay tuned tomorrow. Okay, then Heather Dinich says, Oresco on format. I'm fine myself. I think he meant I find myself with the 5-7, assuming we stay at 12 teams. And the 5-7 is something we really have to have, because otherwise, what's the point of all the work we did for 6-6? Oresco said if there's no Pac-12, the 5-7 is fine. Whoa!
Well, I think that he's probably feeling the same way I am, that they don't really have much of a leg to stand on in terms of the Pac-12 assets and Pac-12 name. I think he probably believes that the 10 leaving members are going to vote to dissolve. But I can't imagine him making that statement if Washington State and Oregon State were getting accepted somewhere.
Well, I think that for me, the big part of that is Oresco seems to be okay giving up the 6'6", going to a 5'7". Why would he give that up? My thought was he would only give that up. The G5s would only give that up because there's no incentive for them to change from 6'6" to 5'7", unless they were getting some assurances that in 2026 they would have playoff access.
Well, you're going to have to get that in writing.
Yeah, they would have to get that in writing. But why would they give up the 6'6" if that wasn't the case? Why would they say, okay, 5'7" is fine as long as we have 9? Why do that, Oresco? This is intriguing. I wonder.
Yeah, I think part of it is he thinks the PAC's going to dissolve. So you're only going to have the automatic 4. And he thinks that that's going to leave that 5th independent G5 slot open.
But fine, but why not? They have the power. The G5 conferences have the power to keep it at 6'6", which means they would have 2 G5 access for 2 G5 champions.
They do, Greg, but at the same time, the leverage does still lie with the A4.
Sure.
The A4 can push them out completely and say, okay,
starting in 2026.
Right. So I think they're trying to be pliable with the wishes of the A4.
And I think we're coming at the same point, but from 2 different sides. I would be very. This is intriguing, very intriguing. I'm hoping. Maybe I'm hoping too much. I'm hoping that they have had some discussions in around 2026 and Oresco and the Sun Belt and everybody saying, okay, all right, we'll go 5-7. We'll have 7 at large with 9 conferences. We'll have 5 automatic qualifiers, 7 at large. But, 2026, we need a seat at the table. Something like that.
Well, one, you're making an assumption there would be 9 conferences. There could be 7 or 8 conferences at that point, Greg, with,
Well, that's true. There could be, yeah, you're right.
The Big Ten could swell to 20 to 22. The SEC could swell to 20. I have a feeling that the ACC is going to gobble up a good portion of AAC teams. In particular, Tulane is definitely going to be part of that ACC. Rice will probably become a new part of that ACC. You're going to see maybe San Diego State joins that new ACC. So, I think you're going to see a lot of shifting. I think consolidation is hitting the big leagues first, and then it's going to hit the smaller leagues second. So maybe that 5-7, maybe that's him looking at it and saying, hey, we're the AAC and we know we're merging or we're doing some partnership with the Mountain West. And by doing this, we're securing ourselves that 5th spot and we're leaving the Sun Belt behind.
Just the more I think about it, though, for Oresco, I don't know. I guess I've spent too much time on it, but
hey, you know what? We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah,
Greg.
tomorrow.
I just wanted to ask you a question about the PATC Theater. That's why I called.
Yes, okay.
Are your people 100% sure that North Carolina is not in the theater?
I feel comfortable. Now, when I talk about what's going on in the theater, that is me trying to distribute the information in a way that I can. So no one is telling me, no one's saying to me, this is what should be happening in the theater. Craig, they do have a good kick out of how I do it, though. But I feel comfortable in saying that North Carolina and Clemson are not in the theater. That right now it's Florida State at the end of the stage, and North Carolina and Notre Dame is sitting in row 5. We don't think now. Again, could be wrong, but North Carolina now a lot of people are going to disagree when I say this, and that's cool, that's fine. But from what we know, as of right now, North Carolina and Clemson are nowhere near where Florida State is in possibly taking action.
But they're in the foyer.
They're in the foyer, yes.
Okay.
And they're
All
very
right, that's
important.
just what I wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd heard something different, so I just wanted to check with you. So that answered my question, Greg.
Got it. Appreciate it, man.
All right.
You
Take
guys
it
are
easy,
going to have
Greg.
a
I'll
great
talk to you
show
later.
tonight. All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Wayne Gerbach. Oresco knows 2026 is right around the corner. And does he want to negotiation to be more contentious than necessary? Great comment, Wayne. They just got to make sure. Now, like I said it in episode 310 this morning. If you haven't watched our episode, take a look at it. You know, this G5 have a chip to play, right? You know, their goal is in 2026, because 2026, we don't need a unanimous decision. Don't need everybody to agree. Don't even know who's going to be in the room to vote on this stuff. Hopefully it's everybody together trying to figure out the best pathway forward. And then if people can't come to a consensus, it's probably going to be by majority vote. Maybe. But, you know, SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to push their weight around. And I'm hoping right now, after reading Heather Dinich's comments about what happened, what Oresco said, I mean, let me just say it real here, right? Oresco on the format. I'm fine with the 5-7, assuming we stay at 12 teams. And the 5-7 is something we really have to have, because otherwise, what's the point of all the work we did for the 6-6? Oresco said if there's no Pac-12, the 5-7 is fine. So Oresco doesn't seem like he wants to push the envelope to make sure that there's 2 playoff spots for the G5 conference champions, because that's what it would be. Without a Pac-12, there's 9 conferences, 6 automatic berths, 4 power autonomy conferences. That means there would be 2 spots for the G5. It doesn't sound like Oresco is willing to push the envelope on that. He said, okay, 5-7 is fine. With 9 FBS conferences, 5-7 is fine for 2024, for 2025. For me, he's probably not going to have anything in writing like Mullen just said he better have, but to me, they've gotten some feedback, hopefully in regards to 2026, that they will continue to have access. But tomorrow is going to be, a very intriguing day when it comes to the meetings going on in Chicago. Wow. Anyways, I think we're going to close it up for tonight. Thanks for all joining us. We've been on longer than I ever thought we would for tonight's show. We did our selections for week number 5, the PATC community with your votes. You made your picks, I made my picks. And then we talked about the college football playoffs, the discussions going on in Chicago. Some interesting comments from Mike Oresco late this evening. Heather Dinich reporting from ESPN. Tomorrow's going to be very intriguing. We're going to be doing an episode on it. We'll be breaking in live whenever we get the good reporting coming out of the college football reporters. These meetings in Chicago are important for the playoffs, 2024, 2025. Keep it at 12 teams. It looks like now we could be looking at a 5-7, which would make the Autonomy 4 conferences, especially Big Ten and the SEC, happy. Interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. So stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. Before you leave, make sure you hit the subscribe button, smash the like button, and share the video with your family and friends. We're going to be following this most important story in the Washington State and Oregon State and all the conference races here in the 2023 football season. So much drama, so much going on in the college football landscape. Thanks to you all for joining us this evening. Until next time, which will be tomorrow. Until next time, from all of us at PATC to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much.